back for another one. Again, thank you for all of the likes. Thank you for all the listens. Thank you for all the subscribers, the views. I'm gonna keep kicking these out. Very much appreciate it. All right. So you do see the title. You do see the thumbnail. This is about the idea of marriage. A guy tweeted, at Twitter. His Twitter is very, it's always very fun. He tweeted, how can we get more men to be interested, or why aren't more men interested in marriage? And, you see some comments and, things of that nature. And enough of the comments where they started, like, the question already starts from a real, misinformed place, because black men are just more married than black women. And I don't think he knew that. You know what I'm saying? Black women are the least married. And a lot of the comments are really just more about, like, men growing up or men being better people and things of that nature. And, my comment was, we need to essentially change the laws associated with it. Get rid of no-fault divorce, default to 50-50 custody, things like that. And, change the culture. Don't culturally and financially incentivize women to divorce. And a lot of times when you talk about marriage, because of the pros and the cons of marriage, people think that you speak against marriage. But it's not a thing where it's a space, if you will, or people speak against marriage, or black men specifically are against marriage. It's just the pros and the cons are what they are. And when you speak about the pros and the cons, it just sounds negative. But, like, I would liken it to, let's say if you're jumping off of a building, or you're planning on jumping off of a building. I would give you the pros and the cons, to that. I mean, you could die and you could also live, which would, probably be, bad too, because then you would survive jumping off of a building. And, that would be bad. And I think that once you got to the pros and the cons, you'd be like, oh, okay, well, this is probably not a good idea. You know what I mean? And it's in the same way that you objectively look at being married. Not that marriage is bad, inherently bad, but it is inherently unequal. The laws only really affect men in the sense that there are legal ramifications for us being an asshole, legal ramifications against us being a jerk during the marriage, and there aren't really much legal ramifications for women being jerks in the context of a marriage. I'll give you an example. Let's say you're married for 10 years, you've been together with a woman for 15. You have two lovely kids, a girl and a boy. The boy is the oldest. You have a 6 and a 4-year-old, and you love those kids. You both are raising these kids. They have your last name. Your son takes after you. He's very much into sports, very much into his reading and things of that nature. And you and him have a really, really good relationship in that way. Your daughter just loves daddy, all daddy first team. Daddy, and she's your little princess. And his daddy can do no wrong, And you start noticing that the kids that you love aren't really, looking like you. And so you go and you are, encouraged by, maybe a brother or something like that to get a DNA test. And you go and you get a DNA test, a paternity test, and you find out both kids aren't yours. You approach your wife with this information. These lovely little motherfuckers aren't mine. And she's, of course, very emotional. She does what women typically do in these situations. She cries. And, the situation is unfortunate. You try to deal with it, but ultimately you come to the conclusion that divorce has to happen. So not only did she cheat, 2 kids, not yours, and that's it. 2 kids, not yours. You want a divorce, and you want to get out of there. So when you decide to do that, what do you think happens? I'll tell you what happens. What happens is that you lose just like you would have lost if she didn't cheat, if those kids were yours, and you cheated and she filed a divorce. There are no legal checks against her poor behavior. Now, there's an emotional check. I mean, as a woman, you're a shitty person. There's a little bit of embarrassment. But I would, as a man, I would want something more than that. In most states, you're the father of those kids. In most states, and I'm saying most because there may be a state whereas they were just like, nah, this bitch is full of shit. We're not going to reward her for this goofiness. But in most states, you are the father. You know what I mean? Even though you're not the father, you're the father. Because you signed the birth certificate, the kids were had in the context of marriage. The kids are yours. If I'm a man and I know that extreme situation is only like my only protection against that situation is if you're not a hoe, that's it. There's nothing legal that happens. The only protection from it is if you're not a hoe. Then I don't know how marriage sounds great. Now, granted, most of us are not out here saying, ooh, she's a hoe that sucks a lot of dick, I'm going to marry her, right? Because men don't typically see that as a good investment. I know that conventional wisdom is that men just want, the girl who's giving pussy to everybody. No, that's not actually true. What's actually true is that we'll fuck her, but we won't marry her. Because marrying a hoe is a bad investment. But let's say you don't know you got a hoe because she's hidden her wholeness very, 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 very well. My only protection against you being a hoe, my only protection between, against you being a bad person is if you're not a bad person. And I know most people would think like you have to then pick better. But women don't have to pick better. I'll give you an example. Let's say a woman picks a dude who has 8 baby mamas. That's probably not going to work. If he has 8 baby mamas, he's probably who he is. The outcome is going to be bad because you should have known that it was going to be bad from the jump. Right? Because this person has 9 baby mamas. He ain't married none of them because they his baby mamas. He's not an ex-husband. He's a baby daddy. He's never married any of these women. The state will give you subsidies. The state will give you benefits and assistance based on that. The state will make him pay child support. The state will help you out in the event you make a bad decision. So not only does the state protect you from if he ain't shit, the state also rewards you if you make a bad decision. But the state doesn't do that for men. Not at all. Now, it's not to say that you shouldn't get married. It's just to say our only protection in marriage is if you're not full of shit. That's it. Our only protection is if you're not full of shit. If I cheat on you and you leave me, you're going to take the kids likely. And I'm full of shit. And so for people, I mean, even though I don't believe that the punishment fits the crime, for most people, that's like, well, that's what you get. You know, you lose your kids now. Now, I don't believe that should happen, but there's at least a check against my bad behavior. A legal check against my bad behavior. You know the reason that a lot of times women don't see a lot of this shit as poor behavior? It's because there's no penalty. Like, women literally don't see hoe behavior as bad behavior. Well, most of the problem with that being a hoe behavior, most of that is just, okay, well, you're putting yourself at risk. And, you know, you got hoe phases and you got hoe culture, slut culture, and, you know, women's liberation and sexual liberation and so on and so forth. So a lot of women don't see anything wrong with it. And women will even tell you, well, if a man can do it, so can a woman. Of which, it's not really a defense. It's like saying, you know, Judge, Your Honor, I know I robbed the bank, but, you know, in my defense, men do it too. I rest my case. You know, you probably gonna do some time. You know, probably not as much time as a man because, you know, the numbers suggest that women get lesser time for the same crime. But back to it. The reason that a lot of this poor behavior in marriage is really not seen as poor behavior, more par for the course, is because there's no penalty for it. So that would challenge people to just give me one legal check that is specifically designed to protect men from women's poor behavior. Not nothing like murder. That's not specifically designed against women. You would say that's for anybody. You know? Not something that's illegal on both fronts, but something that's specifically designed to protect men and punish women for poor behavior. Because the reason that men don't really see marriage as a viable option, even though we do it more than our women, and I'm talking black men, black women, is because there's really no benefit to it. Now, most people would say, you know, there's a benefit to having somebody there for you all the time. Well, I can do that without being married. There's a benefit because, unlike dudes that hit you with, there's tax benefits. It's like, yeah, but if she takes half my shit, then what's a fucking tax benefit? You know what I mean? Like, all that tax benefit I got, and then she just takes it all. It's the goofiest shit I've ever heard. There's certain tax benefits. You're an idiot. You're an idiot. If you say that there's tax benefits to being married, you're a dummy. You know what I'm saying? You're a dummy. There's also financial penalties for getting divorced. And there's women who are idiots as well who say, well, if you ain't really got no money like that, then what's she gonna take? Look, as a woman, if you're married, I don't know the actual amount of time, but let's say 10 years, because I know it's at least 10 years. If you're a woman, you're married to a man for at least 10 years, you're entitled to his pension. Most men work and are in the middle class. Most black men. The part where we don't have any money, like, okay, let's say we don't. We at least got some kind of way to have a retirement, right? But whatever little bit of money that we have, you are entitled to half of that. So our little bit of money that we have, let's say it's nothing, you can take half of it. And the only way that you don't do it is if A, you don't know, of which, right? Or B, you just decide not to. That would be the equivalent of, like, I'm not for hitting women, right? I would never say hit a woman. Never put your hands on a woman in a violent way. Anytime you're putting your hands on a woman, let it be consensual sex or a hug, right? And make sure that's consensual too, because, you know, it's crazy out here. Me Too, run around like a badass kid. Don't put your hands on women. I'm against that. Vehemently against putting your hands on women. But this is like having the only protection against a man busting a woman upside the head, of which most men don't hit women. The only protection being picking a good guy who doesn't bust women upside the head. And like, if in the event he did, you're like, well, you should have picked better. Most men don't hit women upside the head. And you just so happen to pick one that did. It's your fault. It's called victim blaming, people. That's what it's called. Your protection against men busting you upside the head is a little deeper than I hope he doesn't bust people upside the head. You have the law. You have like police. You have a cultural penalty for that. Like, men don't look at men who bust women upside the head as men. You look at them as suckers. You a sucker. The only way that you can bust a woman upside the head is if it's 7 of them and they're hitting you and you got to get them off of you. You know what I'm saying? Or like she got a brick in her hand or something like that. Or you got to disarm her. You can't just hit a woman upside the head. There's cultural penalties, you know what I'm saying, to it. You can't just you have layers of protection from that. You have other guys that'll jump in. I know that, you know, people feel like, you know, black women are the least protected sector of America. That's not true. Black women are the most protected. It's fucking ridiculous. You know, black boys are actually the least protected. And that fucking makes me upset. That women are that fucking... Moving on. Our protection in marriage should be better than I hope she's not a bad person. That's our only protection against your bullshit. If you decide not to be bullshit. So that's why marriage is not really advantageous for guys. Now, niggas is still gonna get married. You know what I'm saying? Again, we have more marriages percentage-wise and numerically than our women. So, realistically, motherfuckers don't give a fuck anyway. 80% of the divorces are filed by our women. So, like, whatever. You know, I guess the fact that it's like that and dudes still get married is more of a commentary on this gynocentric thinking that we just have, whereas the women kind of run it and either shit or get off the pot, that kind of deal. So we're kind of led by our women. But yeah, that's essentially why we don't get married like that, because our only protection against their bullshit is if they decide not to be bullshit. Nothing else. And even in the extreme example I gave, there's still no penalty for it. You know? So, to the guy who posed the question, you know, I mean, you know, he's probably a good guy. You know, I think he's married. You know, yeah, it's just a bad question. It's not really a good question. It's a very either uninformed question, or you do know and you're being disingenuous. You know, hopefully, you know, you do read up on some things and kind of understand what this marriage thing is about. You know, I'm for, you know, long-term relationships and being in committed relationships. But, you know, I'm always on the fence about marriage because, my divorce could have went very, very bad. If my ex-wife knew more, if she just knew how to fuck me more, you know what I mean? But yeah, that's gonna be my time. I appreciate all the listens, likes, all of the views, all of the subscribers. Again, I'm gonna just keep kicking these out until we get to 100. Hopefully we can get to 100 subscribers and just keep pushing this thing along. I appreciate everybody. It's Mike Perkins. I'm out.